everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, my name's Melanie. Today's video is going to be showing you how to create a whimsical chicken porch leaner. I know that sounds a little funny, but if whimsy is your thing, this might be something you'd want to create. Today's video is also with a YouTube collaboration. We have two hosts today, Dawn with Shabby Meets Bling, Monica, Up All Night DIY, and our guest host is Jody at Southern Seasons. Now you're going to find the link to their channels inside of the description box, as well as the playlist for all of the other creators who are in today's outdoor living event. Well, let's jump right on in. I'm going to be showing you a little bit about the materials I used, and then I'll show you the drawing steps and the painting steps and show you what it looks like in my little slice of heaven, my screened-in porch. Well, if you decided you're going to make one, you're going to want to take a trip to your local lumberyard, and I thought I would include a few items that you might want to add to your shopping list. Now, if you're going to be using wood, you're going to be having 3 different grades of wood to choose from. A low price wood, which means there's going to be wood knots most likely. You'll need to check it because the surfaces won't be necessarily quite even, and there may be some splinters in there too. So when you go up, you're going to have a middle and a high grade of lumber. The high grade, of course, is going to be more expensive, but you won't have the knots and it'll be a better quality wood. But this time around, I found this particular brand. I purchased this at my local Menards. It was already cut at a 4 feet height, which is what I wanted anyway, and it didn't have any of the wooden knots on the front of my board. There was just a couple on the back, which I'm perfectly fine with, and it was already sanded and ready to go. All of those things are going to help me save some time. Because there's no knots on that piece of wood, I'm not going to have to prime it to stop the bleeding of the knots coming through. Knots are going to keep on coming through your surface even after it's finished, and even if you seal it at the end. So you do need to put a stain blocking primer on first if you choose that quality of wood. But this doesn't have it, so I can skip right to my painting part because I'm using an exterior paint. And this particular exterior paint, it can be used as a primer and a base coat. Gonna save me some steps there too, so I don't have to do any extra priming, and I can do it in 2 coats of paint. I did choose a flat black paint. That's going to help in the end if I need to do any touch-ups. Because the sheen is flat, you won't notice where I go in and touch it up at all. Another bonus, it's going to save some time. You're going to want to add a roller, a mini roller, to your shopping list. This is what you're going to want to use to base coat those big large surfaces. It's going to go faster, and you're not going to see any of the brush marks or buildup on there. You're going to need some sealer for the end. You're going to want to choose, I chose to use this one here. It's a Varathane, it's a spar urethane. It's water-based, but you're still going to want to spray it outside. But this is great for interior or exterior, no matter where you're putting it. If you're putting it on cement directly on there, you're going to want to make sure you get your edges really well so none of the moisture creeps up through your wood and ruin your precious little whimsical chicken porch leaner. Well, that's it for now. Let's go right on in to the drawing part. I started with a simple sketch. I drew a long rectangle, and this was going to help me figure out like the words I wanted to put on there and how much space I actually had to be able to write in. I'm going to be doing some hand lettering. I didn't want to purchase a stencil for this process because I'm only planning on painting it once, so I thought I'd give hand lettering a try. It's rather like a drawing skill. The more you practice it, the better you get. I don't consider myself a professional, but I'm going to give it a whirl. These cute little chicks were inspired by a Pinterest item I saw. The artist wasn't credited, so I can't give you her name, but they're super cute. I added my own things and made it my own, and hopefully you'll give it a try as well. So here I have my sketch drawn. My hand lettering is on there. Going to be doing a whimsical style. I'm using a little piece of chalk to help measure out just roughly of where I want my lettering to go. So I'm placing it down as I go, just drawing it in chalk. Now I will be able to erase this if I would like, and just getting a better idea of how to place my lettering. Once I've got my lettering on, now I'm going to be working on those chicks. The first little chick, she's going to be upside down. I'm going to be placing in my items. I'm going to be doing 3. I'm going to have 2 white chicks and 1 brown chick. They're going to have some little special details on their heads and wearing some funky little glasses at the top. I'm adding some of the details in with my chalk, but not a lot. I'm going to be painting over some of those, so I don't need to spend a lot of time adding all those extra details. Here's my little chick. She's upside down and she's all drawn. And I'm going to be adding just a few more items. I'm going to be placing some greenery in here. I wanted to add some flowers and some greenery in my background. So I'm just finding the places that might work the best. Now once that's all drawn in, I'm going to go ahead and base coat a white over the majority of the items I just drew. I'm covering them up, but I'm going to be creating an area to be able to have my paint show through. It wouldn't show up very well if I just used the black background, so I'm going to base coat it white and then add my colors on top. I'm using 3 different Ceramcoat colors, Spice Brown, Light Ivory, and White to create the feathers on my chick. And in the areas of her bandana and her wattle, I'm using Apple Barrel's Bright Red with a little bit of accents of the Deco Arts Bright Orange, and of course a little bit of white back and forth. I use a flat brush to create my feathers on the angle, just going up and down motions to create a feather look, and just allowing things to dry in between and then adding dark first and then the lights on top of there. Once I have all of that on there and laid in, I take a pencil and I draw my beak in and I draw where I want my eyes. I just like to have that as a reference once I have all my paint in and dry. Then I go ahead and base coat that beak in the color of Apple Barrel's King's Gold. It's a nice bright yellow. I put that in and I also add a little bit of accents of the bright orange color that I used before, as well as the white to create the little highlights and shadows on my beak. Now these little glasses are super cute and fun and funky. I went ahead and I base coated those white and added the whites to my eyes as well and put in the placing of where I wanted them. These adorable glasses were painted in 2 coats of the Americana's Sea Breeze color. It's a great aqua color and looks great with the rest of the colors that I'm using. I use the end of my paintbrush to add the little dots. It works great. Just dip your brush into the paint and tap on and you'll get different variety of dots by doing it this way. The leaves are getting a coat of the forest green Ceramcoat color. I'm going to do 2 coats of that. Once it's dry, I'm going to do a blending of colors of that Sea Breeze color as well as the Americana color called Citron Green and a little dash of white to be able to put some highlights on there. The little brown hen is going to get a darker underpainting. I'll be using colors Burnt Sienna and Raw Umber and the Deco Art colors, as well as the Ceramcoat color Spice Brown. I use my angle brush on its tips and I create little hash marks. It's a great way to create this little feather look by just dragging your brush up and down lightly and different variations of pressure on it to create a nice little feather look. Now once I get all my base coat painting in, I'm going to make sure it's dry, and then I'll be adding on my light colors next. I'm going back to that Ceramcoat color, Light Ivory, a little bit of white, and I'm adding in some accents of that King's Gold color as well. To do this little chick's comb and her wattle area, I will be going back to that bright red color in Apple Barrel. I'll be laying in 2 coats of that color, and once that color is dry, I'll be coming back in and doing that blend on blend of wet colors by picking up a little bit of the bright red color on my paintbrush, as well as the bright orange color on my paintbrush, and I'll be dabbing and pushing those colors around to create another layer of depth and interest into those little areas. Now once that area is done, I'll be coming back in with my pencil and I'm going to be sketching in where I want the eyes and the beak to be in. Once I have those areas drawn out, I'm using some white paint to base coat in where I want the eyes and the beak to give me a nice bright surface for those paint colors. I'm going to use King's Gold and a little bit of the bright orange color and some white on my brush, and I'm going to be blending those colors on my beak area. I'm not rinsing my colors out in between time. I'm just using a dirty brush and blending the colors as I go. These eyes give these chicks such a whimsical look. I'm using black to create the pupil of the eye. I'm using a pretty small brush. I'm going to be using this in the center of my eyes, as well as using this little tiny brush to create her some great lashes. Some at the top, some at the bottom. And oops, I get that lash way too big, but I have a good way to go ahead and correct that. I take a little bit of Q-tip that's wet at the end and I just give it a rub, and it kind of acts like an eraser. You can easily take some details out with these little Q-tips, and if you need to, you can go back in and touch up with your paint. I'm using my end of my paintbrush to create the dots for the highlights of her eyes. I'm giving one at the top and then adding two at the bottom. They're fairly large eyes, so this gives a nice sparkle to her eyes. Now I'm taking that little small brush that I used to create her eyelashes to do a little bit of the outlining around her eyes. I continue that process of painting the leaves using the forest green, adding 2 coats of that color, and then using the blend on blend technique of a wet brush, dirty brush using Sea Breeze and the citron green and a little bit of white to build up the color on those leaves. As a part of my design, I wanted to create these simple like daisy flowers in there. So I used my round brush to create a simple little circle in the middle using the King's Gold and a little bit of white. And for my petals, I just used the same colors that I painted my little brown hen in, the colors of burnt sienna, raw sienna, and a little bit of spice brown. Just using a dirty brush as I go along, not rinsing my brush off at all, and just combining those colors as I'm making my circle patterns around my flower. I re-emphasize the circle, again coming in with my King's Gold and my white, using a dirty brush, tapping in my colors as I go. Making my petals a little bit brighter, I add a little bit more King's Gold to that area, just to add another layer of brightness to those little flowers. To add a little bit more interest to these flowers, I use the end of my paintbrush and I tap in some more dots, kind of to give a little bit of a seed pattern into the center of my flowers using black paint. I have one little last chick down in the corner to finish. She's a little white hen sitting in the corner, and I created her bandana using the Sea Breeze color and a little bit of white highlights. And then I used the end of my paintbrush to create those cute little polka dots on there to add a lot of interest to that little area. To create the lettering, I base coated my letters in a coat of white paint with a simple little round brush, and then I came back and I used the King's Gold and the bright orange and that same technique of using the dirty brush, not washing it off in between colors, and creating that blend on blend look. And here these whimsical chicks are displayed in my favorite spot, my screened-in porch. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet and you would like to, hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell so you can get notifications of when I'm going live. Make sure you check out the hosts from today's collaboration. Their links are inside of the description box, as well as the playlist. You're going to want to see what everyone creates for today's event for outdoor spaces. Thanks everyone for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and see me again.